That is a great question. So, just to repeat the question for the mics that are connected to the online streams, if somebody was born in a Muslim household but they didn't practice, meaning they didn't pray at all or fast and so on, and then in their 20s they came back to the deen in the sense they started practicing, do they need to make up all those prayers? And the answer is no. Qada al Umri is a concept that has been discussed a lot by the scholars of Islam, but we don't find any evidence for it. In fact, what we find from the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Man tarku salah faqad kafar. Whoever abandoned the prayer has done kufr. Another hadith, he said, Baynana wa baynahum as-salah, faman tarkaha faqad kafar. That between us and them, yani the mushrikeen, is the salah. Whoever abandons it has done kufr. Another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Bayna rajuli wa shirki wal kufr as-salah. What demarks between a person and kufr and shirk is salah. So if somebody was not praying at all, meaning not just missing prayers, but they weren't praying at all, then it is as if they became Muslim when they came back to their deen. So they do not make up those salawat. If they were praying occasionally and they were missing them occasionally, but this went on for 20 years, as you've mentioned in the question, then again, there is no making up for that. But if somebody missed particular salawat, like let's say somebody missed dhuhr, and they know they missed dhuhr that day, then yes, that salah, there is qada, there is making up, but not for 20 years of not praying. That also applies for Ramadan and fasting. Basically, if you were not making salah at all, then when you came to Islam, you're a new Muslim, you're a revert.
Okay, question number 2. Do we need to consume halal beef tallow or can we use non-halal? And can we use non-halal beef tallow on the skin?
Okay, good question. Regarding beef tallow, that is from Meita or haram beef that's killed in a way that's not against the Sharia, can we consume that? The answer is no. So anything that is a part of the animal itself. Now, enzymes, there is some discussion whether enzymes live on past the animal's life and so on. But if you look at gelatin, if you look at tallow, if you look at the bones and so on, that's a part of the animal, then we have to eat from that which is halal. Dhabiha, slaughtered according to the Islamic Sharia. Using it on the skin, the issue would be if it's meita, it's najis, so you would not use it on the skin either.
What about for medicine, if that's the only option available depending on environment in the city?
For medical treatment, if it's a necessity, then we have a principle in the Sharia called darura, meaning a necessity. And as the usul and fiqh goes, a darurat, the necessities, yubih, they make permissible muharramat, that which is haram regularly. Meaning that even though regularly we'd say it would be haram, but due to medical necessity, it would be permissible. But that's for a necessity, not for like getting glowing skin or something.
Next question. Are there any free cities for learning, or sites, I'm sorry, sites. Are there any free sites for learning more about Islam and more importantly, learning Arabic to be able to understand the Quran better?
There are a lot of sites. The question is, are there any free sites for learning Islam? There are a lot of sites. One of them, we have the Masjid Ribat channel. So we have two YouTube channels. One is called the One Message Foundation, and that's our channel more for the da'wah, for non-Muslims with debates and da'wah and stuff. But we also have a channel called Masjid Ribat, Masjidribat. If you put in YouTube, that's our masjid channel, and we have Arabic, we have Mustalah al-Hadith, Aqidah, Sirah al-Nabawiyya min Hadith al-Sahiha, Fiqh, all of those sciences there. It's free, there's no need to sign up, you don't have to give your email or anything. There are playlists, you can go and learn from there, Arabic grammar and all of that. That's a YouTube channel. On top of that, there are other institutes now. Like I was recently in Saudi Arabia and I met with the brothers that run the Zad Academy. It's a free online, place to learn. You do have to sign up and things, but that's also a resource. And I'm sure there are many others, you can find as well.
Another question. In the West, what is the proper hijab? We're told not to draw attention to ourselves, but hijab and niqab could draw attention in certain ways?
So the question is, in the West, what is a proper hijab? Because at times, wearing hijab or niqab could draw attention to yourself. So again, hijab is not about not drawing attention, but rather being modest, right? Meaning, if you go to a place that, a French beach where everybody's walking around naked, and you even wear just regular clothes, you are going to attract attention because you're not walking around naked in a nude beach, right? But that's not the point. The point of hijab is modesty and haya. So that means hijab doesn't change in the East or the West. Hijab, the ayat of hijab were revealed for the Muslim ummah no matter where they live. So if you live in Saudi Arabia, or if you live in America, or if you live in China, hijab is hijab. Right? Now, obviously, the best and the most complete form of hijab is the most concealing, right? Meaning, Aisha radiallahu anha used to say the women of the Ansar used to come to the masjid and go back without even being recognized. So they were that well covered that even if you saw them, you couldn't recognize them. Another ahadith, she mentioned that when the ayat of hijab were revealed, the women, they took their outer garments, which were the aprons they would wear on top of their clothes, they tore them and covered their heads and faces with them. So they covered themselves completely. So if somebody is able, then no doubt the proper hijab is to wear a full abaya, niqab, and gloves, and that is the ideal. But again, if somebody's in a situation where they feel like their life would be in danger and they would be attacked physically, which, I mean, maybe you can, I mean, after 9/11 and things, there was a harsh time that the Ummah went through in the West. Although today I really wouldn't see that to be a situation. Then for them to maybe wear some more colors and so on would be permissible to try to not be the target of so much hate. But again, especially if you're with your husband and brothers and fathers, that's really their job to make sure that you're protected and able to practice your religion. If we're unable to wear hijab in the West, we should move. Like my advice to our sisters in France is move. I mean, of course, sometimes they depend on their husbands or fathers and brothers and so on. But if we live in a country where we cannot practice our religion, why are we living there? So for me, and if I live in the West, I pray, dress, act the same as I would dress anywhere else or act anywhere else. And if I don't, then Allah has given us a big earth to live in.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Wa
rahmatullahi
alaikum.
wa barakatuh, Shaykh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakumullah khair for being here today. I am actually very happy that I'm able to speak with you, especially in regards to being a dairy. And I know tomorrow is for the men, so obviously I can't chime in there. So I'm gonna pop in here and ask a question. I watch all of your videos religiously, and it has helped me a lot, alhamdulillah, to reach lots of people within the Christian community and people within my own family that unfortunately didn't grow up learning Islam the proper way. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
It's okay,
But
relax.
in any case, I'm curious to know. I'd like to start doing more videos, but my question is, I'm hijabi in obviously in regular life, but if I'm putting myself on the internet, should I be covering my face?
It's a good question. And first thing, may Allah bless you for you doing your da'wah and for the good that you're doing and reaching out to non-Muslims and even Muslims that may be in need. And I think tomorrow the sisters can attend, but I think the program is more for the brothers, but you can ask the administration more about that. And it will be, I think, online as well, so you can definitely make sure you get that knowledge that is there. I think the best thing for our sisters, especially, is to try to protect yourself from online exposure as much as you can. Because even for men, to be honest, it's a big fitna. Not a fitna just like, okay, you're online and you're famous or something, but you become a target. It's everybody, every Christian, every atheist, every Islamophobe, every hater just makes you a target because they got nothing better to do with their time apparently. So for our sisters, we advise that you can get involved in the da'wah. The online da'wah is very important, but you can take clips from du'at, you can take clips from ulama, put them together, make them we have long da'wah videos. Many brothers and sisters around the world, they take clips from it, they translate them, they make shorts and reels, and of ulama as well, like Shaykh Ibn Baz, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, or other du'at like Dr. Zakir Naik or Muslim Lantern or all the other brothers that are out there doing great work. If you take those clips and post them and kind of get that da'wah out to people, this is the best way. The only time we would suggest, sisters, if there was some unique, like you spoke a language that, or were able to connect with a particular, community that nobody else could, and then I would definitely suggest covering the face because one, obviously, this is a correct, and Islamic best form of hijab, and secondly, because it will protect your identity from being targeted and so on. Karamakallah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
In this situation where a woman has been married to her husband for more than 30 years and has adult kids, she reverted to Islam, but her husband is still not Muslim. What can she do, or what should she do in this position?
Yeah, so to repeat the question, if a woman has been married to her husband for more than 30 years and has adult children, and now she's a Muslimah and he's not, what should she do? So obviously the first thing is to give him da'wah. Like many of the Sahabiyat, when they became Muslim, they gave da'wah to their husbands. And many times, even if they think the husband would not be open to it, in the end, they are. And sometimes they do accept Islam. Many of the Sahaba, they became Muslim in this way. And in that sense, that would be great. They're already married. They don't need to do another nikah according to the more stronger opinion and so on. And they live their life, alhamdulillah, as two Muslims together. If he is not willing to accept Islam, then her options are to either stay married to him but not live with him, in the sense that she would not be having physical contact and so on. But for the sake of the children, whatever, she could go live with one of the children or on her own and continue to give him da'wah, hopefully. But that marriage is no longer going to be valid Islamically, meaning she cannot be having spousal relations with him anymore. As a Muslimah, she cannot be married to a mushrik. This is without any ikhtilaf of ulama. There's no disagreement amongst the scholars of Islam on this issue. And I know it's difficult because if you've been married that long and so on, but iman and shirk cannot combine, and if you think about, and I have seen situations where women became Muslim and they stayed with non-Muslim husbands, and even if they didn't take the advice and do what's right and leave them, in the end they ended up leaving them anyway. Because when a husband, for example, drinks and eats pork and goes out to clubs or whatever else that is common in Western society, even amongst Christians and Jews and so on, does those things, how can a practicing Muslimah live with him? Yeah? This is one of the reasons why, even when we talk about being married to a woman from the Ahlul Kitab, we always give nasiha to our brothers not to rather to marry a Muslimah or to give her da'wah and make her where she can be a Muslimah as well. Because when those two ideologies clash, one of fulfilling the desires and the other of being subservient to the Creator, it doesn't mix. The thing with like what people forget today, and many of you that are reverts or many of you that know the society we live in, as I was raised in the society, Christianity is no longer a religion where they have any principles. I hate to say it that way, but it's reality. Meaning churches today have dances, they have dating services, they have alcohol, they have parties. There is no like halal haram, right? Even if you look at Judaism, which again, at least amongst the Orthodox community, sticks a little bit more to it, but most of the Jews in America, especially amongst the Reform or Reconstructionists as they call themselves, they eat pork, they drink, they go out on dates, they have synagogues with date nights, they have drunk rabbis. I've seen it myself, right? So the reality is that it's split into either follow your desires or be Muslim. And to mix those, it doesn't happen. So that is the advice. Again, she can have some of the brothers from the masjid sit down with him in a nice way and give him da'wah and bring him to the masjid. And we as a community are here to help and support. Volunteering you.
Absolutely.
What are the rulings for travel and combining prayers, as well as women if they have no male relatives to travel with?
So that's a broad question. I mean, are you saying generally the rulings for traveling or just related to women?
To combine
Okay, good.
How do you do that properly?
Perfect. Good question. How do you combine prayers while traveling? Um, from many ahadith, and Shaykh Muqbil has written a whole book on this, collecting ahadith, where the Prophet ﷺ combined the salawat while traveling. So we do know that it is proven from the Prophet ﷺ without a doubt through many sahih ahadith that he did combine. How is the combining? It is done when you travel a distance that makes you a traveler in the Sharia. Now, what institutes a traveler, a musafir, in the Sharia in comparison to a resident, a muqim? There is some discussion of ulama, and I'm not going to go too much detail into it. But in essence, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu Sahaba that explain of 4 burad, which is around 47, 48 Hashimi miles, which is the Islamic mile. So let's take it to a general idea of between 47 and 48 miles. So if your destination is further than that, or that far, or about that far, you don't have to get an inchy tape out. It's not like that. But this is the general idea. Because some people, they say it's just whatever is customary. But then what does that mean? Like if I'm going to go 3 miles out, am I customary a traveler? If I'm going 100 miles, like we don't make it ambiguous. We have to give some kind of guideline. So that guideline is there. So if your destination is more than 48 miles or 80 something kilometers, then when you set out, you are not a traveler yet. When you leave the buildings of your city, as the hadith that they used to see, they said, we left the built area of Medina, then you can start to combine. For example, Atlanta is a city. You are technically not in Atlanta here. You are in Lawrenceville? Lawrenceville, that's a city, right?
Yes.
Right? And Gwinnett County, right? I'm learning. So if your city is Lawrenceville, like this is a city by itself, and your destination is, let's say, for example, 50 miles. So once you leave the buildings of Lawrenceville, and again, in our time, buildings don't end until the next city begins. Meaning in the old days, you would have the buildings and they would end, and then you would have, farms and open area and then the next city. But today, for example, I'm in San Diego. From San Diego to LA, it's all built. There's no farmland, So, but when I leave the city limits of San Diego, if I'm going to go to La Mesa or if I'm going to go to, Escondido, then once I'm out of my city, I can combine. Now, when I reach my destination, so let's say, for example, I'm going from San Diego to LA. Once I leave the city of San Diego, I can now combine and shorten. So shortening the prayer, meaning making 4 Dhuhr into 2, 4 Asr into 2, 4 Isha into 2. Fajr and Maghrib say the same. Is only for travel. Combining has other reasons like rain and others, but shortening is only for travel. So once I leave the city limits, I can shorten and combine. So if I haven't prayed Dhuhr, I can delay it to combine it with Asr. Or once I've left my city limits, if it's still time for Dhuhr, I can pray Dhuhr and Asr together in the time of Dhuhr. And when I reach my destination, if my stay is 4 days or less, 20 salawat. Again, generally, you're not going to get seconds and all that into it. Then you can continue to combine because you're still a traveler. But if your intention is to stay more than 4 days, let's say 5, 6, a month, then once you reach, you're no longer a traveler. Now you're muqim again. And again, on our durus, we go into the hadith and opinions of ulama and all of that stuff. But very simply, the hadith in Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Allah has made haram on the muhajir to be in Mecca when the hijrah had become fard. So before the fath of Mecca, before the opening or liberation of Mecca, the Muslims, it was obligatory upon them to leave Mecca and make hijrah. So he said you could go back to Mecca for 3 days, but not more. Meaning that after the 4th day, then you would become muqim. Another hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told the Sahaba about the wafad, the non-Muslim delegations that came to Medina could not be residents of Medina. This is a place for Muslims. But he allowed them to come as delegations for 3 days, but not more than 4. So because of these ahadith that are clear, the ulama, like the Hanabila, Shawafi and others, Muwaffaquddin ibn Qudama and Shaykh ibn Baz took this opinion as well, They said for more than 4 days you become a muqim. Now there are other opinions, and when you go online, you'll find other opinions. And trust me, I've read them and gone through them. I'm uh, not familiar with them. Where they mentioned, for example, in the Battle of Tabuk was 19 days, and they shortened combined salawat. But that's because it was jihad, and in jihad you don't know how long you're going to stay. In Tabuk, they were waiting for the Romans, so it was not. They didn't plan on being there. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma in the jihad in Azerbaijan, for 6 months he combined and shortened. Yes, but that's again because it was jihad and they were snowed in. So if, for example, you planned on going from here to Augusta, how far is Augusta? It's more than 2 hours. All right. So if you plan on going to Augusta, Georgia, and you were planning on staying there for 3 days, so you're a traveler, and if you got to Augusta and your car got repoed and a snowstorm came in and you were trying to leave every day but you were stuck there, you didn't have the niyyah to stay there for more than 4 days, then even 10 years you can be a traveler. But that's because every day you're trying to leave. But for those that have the niyyah to stay, then more than 4 days you become muqim. So I don't know if that was more than you wanted or but again, I like to give proper evidences and stuff. The issue of traveling with a mahram and without a mahram, the Shari'i travel as what makes you a traveler, for a Muslim woman, it is not permissible except with a mahram. Husband, father, son, and so on. But of course, like you mentioned, there are times where a woman will not have, especially revert sisters, will not have a Muslim in her family who's mahram to her. And in certain situations, ulama have said that she can travel without a mahram. For example, times where she has danger on her life and so on as well. So we do understand there are exceptions, but the general is that you should travel with a mahram as best you can.
Any recommendations how to balance deen and dunya? Sometimes it feels like we put more effort into dunya-related activities such as our jobs, house cleaning, kids, etc. Any tips?
That's a great question. How to balance the deen and dunya? And to be honest, I ask myself that all the time as well, because all of us struggle with this, right? And that's a beautiful thing about Islam, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that we did not create the jinn or humans except for my worship. The scholars of Islam in their tafasir, they said the first thing they said is يَعْبُدُونَ begins with يَعْرَفُونَ, meaning the first thing is to recognize who is Allah. Right? So to find that balance, first advice is to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rububiyyah, how Allah is our Rabb, our owner, our sustainer, how we only worship Allah, how uluhiyyah, meaning that we don't worship other than Allah, and think about the bounties of Allah upon you and the fact that success and failure in dunya and akhirah is only in the hands of Allah. So get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get to recognize how great our Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and then that helps us balance. And even the things of dunya, as you mentioned, cooking and cleaning and taking care of kids, and for men especially, a lot of times outside working, and at times for sisters as well working, and even that we do with a niyyah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning when we raise children, we don't raise them like animals, which is, animals raise children, right? They have prides and herds, but we raise our children on tarbiyah. We raise them on the Quran and Sunnah. We raise them to be good Muslims and du'at. I have my son Yusuf here with me, and as you know, since he was a child, I took him with me for the da'wah. Since he was very, very young, he used to go with me, and as maybe like 4 or 5 year old, he used to go out and give pamphlets, and since then till today, alhamdulillah, he's been involved in the da'wah, even though he has med school and all that. But I told him, you cannot ignore the da'wah for your dunya. You have to balance them out. And this is very important. When we raise our children, we teach them that yes, we get education, yes, we get jobs, yes, we work, but we do all of that for the akhirah. We live in this dunya كأنك غريب عابر السبيل, as from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his advice to Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, as if you are a stranger going through a place or a traveler. So when you live, for example, if I'm traveling, if I'm flying from here to go to, whatever, Australia, and my plane lands somewhere, yes, I need to eat, I need to rest, I need to find my flight, I need to get to my gate. But if I get so caught up at admiring the airport that I miss my flight, then I'm an idiot. Because I was supposed to get to my place, not, oh my God, Dubai airport's so nice. It is nice. But it's to get you to transit planes, not to sit there and try new types of food and miss your flight. So yes, in this dunya you have to live. We're not saying, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't have kids. No, that's not Islam. In Islam, we do all of that. But you marry with the niyyah to support your iman, that is a ibadah. That is a worship. You cook the food because you know this is a responsibility upon you, and you feed your children and family so they can worship Allah, that is a worship. Yeah? And then when you make that niyyah, then you will never take the haram over. Meaning you will not be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to say Bismillah and eat pork because I got to eat. No, because the eating is a ibadah. How am I going to do haram with it? So this is the first thing. Secondly, make schedules. I mean, prioritize your time. Okay, this is my time for Quran. This is my time for the family. This is my time for working. This is my, time for da'wah. This is my time for daily increasing my knowledge. And even when you're cooking and cleaning, you can play Quran, you can play lectures, you can play da'wah videos when, we get all these, heated debates. And that way, instead of just watching, stupid TikTok videos while you're, cooking or whatever, you can still be benefiting from your time.
Okay, the next topic is kind of multiple questions into one, but the rights of a wife and a husband. What are the rules for women working, and does she have to contribute with bills? And the husband having to help with children. How should that function in a marriage?
Might as well write a book when we're at it. So, rights of a husband and wife. Obviously, we don't have enough time tonight to go into that in great detail. Books have been written on it. But in essence, a husband is responsible to be the leader, to be the supporter, to be the breadwinner, to be physically and emotionally the support for the household, and to make sure that the household is taken care of. Meaning, nowadays, especially in the West, we see a lot of guys that go and buy themselves, I don't know, like $500 gaming systems while their, house doesn't have enough food, And, I've seen brothers that buy $800 shoes and their wife's like, hey, we don't have food at home, So that obviously is wrong. And this is incorrect, and that's not a man. He may be a male, but he's not a man. A lot of men especially have no ghira nowadays. They post pictures of their families online or, so on. And it's quite sad and disappointing and so on. And many times the sister is not comfortable with it, but her husband, unfortunately, wants to take her to mixed work parties and so on. And that's unfortunate. And that is not what he should be doing. And a woman's role, obviously, is the nurturer. She is the backbone of the house. She is the one that is going to have the most amount of time with the children and upbringing and giving them that tarbiyah and supporting her husband and supporting the da'wah and supporting his good and supporting his Islamic activities, whatever they may be. Not everybody, somebody may be teaching, somebody may be fighting to defend the Muslim land, somebody might be out giving da'wah, somebody might be a teacher in a school to teach Islamic studies and so on. But whatever the person may be doing to support them in that is the wife's responsibility. And to take care of the household, meaning cooking, cleaning, so on. If she's not working herself, then yes, those are things that she should be doing, as Ibn Taymiyyah and others have mentioned. Now, when we talk about rights, everybody else talks about things like, okay, who obeys who and so on. But this is well known in Islam. A man should be loving, should be the best in his mannerisms towards his wife and his children. Loving, should be the best in his mannerisms towards his wife and his children.